Hi everyone, BC Richfield here on behalf of BrightFunded. Let's take a look at the week ahead. So let's start by taking a look at this week's red folder news. Now, my focus is typically on the US markets, and we've got CB consumer confidence coming in on Tuesday, May 28th. Then my attention turns to Thursday the 30th, where we have preliminary GDP quarter on quarter and unemployment claims. But please do be aware across the FX markets that we have red folder news affecting the Japanese markets, the US, Australia, Europe, and Canada. So let's take a look at the markets, and our focus again this week is going to be on Bitcoin, Ethereum, Euro USD, USD JPY, gold, and the NASDAQ in the form of the NQ contract. So starting here on Bitcoin, and we're going to focus on the weekly and cover the daily as well. We can see here the previous all-time high, okay? And we can see that this has been giving us the level that's capping the market. So when we zoom in here, we can see price came back up into this level. Once we took this liquidity, price then found support in this bullish gap down here. We got this nice bullish pin bar candle with a short nose. Also could be seen as a bullish hammer candle. And then what we were covering moving into last week is looking at that bullish engulfing candle with the expectation for price to run higher. Now we've done that, we're coming back into our key level up here. But while we maintain this and bullish market structure, I am looking for price to move ahead with targets at 72,607.76. Although I do want to see price establish itself and close back above the previous all-time high, which is at 69,000 flat, giving a little bit of further encouragement to the bulls. As we break this down onto our daily now, we can see we've left the weekly levels above. What I'm really interested in here is how price is holding this bullish gap. Now we can see we got wicks below it, but the recovery here shows a bit of strength. So whilst we hold this area, for me, the bias is quite simple. I'm looking for price to progress higher. And the kind of interim high that we have here, 71,761.1. If we close below this, then I'll be looking at these prior swing lows here for price to seek out liquidity, as well as this gap slightly lower down. Now, moving on to Ethereum, obviously we've had an amazing bullish week on Ethereum, the news of the ETH really kind of igniting that market. Now, this was the previous high that we were looking at, price engaged with this. And again, in a very similar way that we've seen with Bitcoin, except with this not being the all-time high, price has taken liquidity from above here. It's had a nice corrective move down now, but is ultimately respecting this bullish gap here. We can see how the wicks have come in, but the bodies have held. Now, we obviously had a really, really big expansion last week. The close of this week should, as long as we don't get a major correction, leave us some kind of bullish gap. But as we are at the moment, we have to retain a bullish bias. We've got targets out there of 4,098 flat. Adding a little bit more granularity to that as we step down here onto the daily, we can see how this large daily fair value gap here, again, supported price. We had a really nice reaction here as price has moved higher. Now, we can see that we've just kind of taken liquidity above this high. So how price reacts here will be key. If price does fail to kind of make any serious progress here, then we could look for the gap to be formed here and for that to hold. If not, then what I would want to see hold at the moment is this order block. Now we can see in here as price closed above this, it's shown willingness to move higher. I want to see this area hold. Again, closes below here, and I think we could move lower. And if I am looking for targets there, then this swing low sat within the fair value gap would be the ideal target to start with. So now moving on to Euro USD, getting into our FX pairs, okay? So again, with the close that we had last week, we can see we formed this gap. This is the area I'm looking now for price to draw down towards. Price has taken liquidity above this high. We failed to get any strong close or displacement above that. So now the expectation is with this gap below for price to draw down into this. Should we close below this gap, remember this is on a weekly scale, then I'd be looking for this area here, the fair value gap inversion, to hold, as these areas often act as good support or resistance if we flip them the other way. Now again, moving to the daily, we can see how well respected this has been here, just kind of set it as we've gone. So now a draw down into this to hold. Remember, this is a daily scale, this is a weekly gap. right? So we could see price draw below this and still recover. So we want to be aware of this gap here as well, which is our daily gap. Now, price is respecting this at the moment. So while it does so, we look for price to move higher. So when we have conflicting bias like that and we're saying to ourselves, okay, on the weekly, maybe we're expecting a move lower, then we can move on to lower time frames and really look to kind of capture those moves. While this is in a bullish structure and it's respecting bullish gaps and market structure, then we have to retain a bullish bias on this time frame. So looking at USD JPY last week, we took a look here at the mother bar high and the mother bar low, forming our inside bar pattern. Here we have the IBH and IBL signifying inside bar high and inside bar low. Now these create ranges, okay? So while the mother bar low and high have remained untapped, we can see that we've swept and now had a strong close above the inside bar high. So for me, the bias is quite simple here on a weekly scale. Unless we close back within here, which I would see as a sign of weakness, and I would expect the lows of the inside bar and mother bar to be ran out. While we hold above this, we hold a bullish bias, targeting the mother bar above. Now, as we look at this on a daily, we get a little bit of a clearer picture. So when price broke down here, two things became evident. One is that we held this bullish gap down here. Look at this long tail wick here, setting another pin bar candle with a short nose or bullish hammer candle. Now on the close of that candle, we had this bearish gap above us, okay? So I'm just going to pop this in red for a moment just to signify that we were looking for price to reject here and move lower. Now, when we close above these, violating them, then that's when our inverted fair value gaps come in. And this is an area we now expect to act as support. So with price taking the recent high over here, I'm looking at this area to act as support if price draws down into here. So again, overlaying that on a daily scale, I'm definitely bullish on USD JPY. Now, as we move on to gold, weekly scale again is nice and clean. We've come up here, we've taken out this previous high. Now we've set this bearish engulfing candle here. Okay, notice how the body has engulfed the previous body here of this candle. So with that in mind, that is a little bit of a bearish sign, but can also be a signal of the fact that we took the external liquidity last week and price is now correcting a little bit lower. So we're going to look for a little bit more detail on the daily, but while we're kind of holding this level, then we could look for price to either come back down and sweep this swing low within the gap here. Again, we know they're good liquidity pools, lows and highs that are within fair value gaps. And that's at 2277.09. And moving to our daily, we can overlay this and look to build ourselves a kind of cleaner picture. So this is the gap that I'm looking at immediately that we can see is supporting price. Now, while we're holding this, the next thing that we want to be aware of is what is capping price, all right? What's holding price down? I'm going to do this one in red again, just so it stands out, but we can see that we've got this gap here. Now, we do have another gap above it as well, but I do think price is drawing up into this at the moment. So intraday long setups are a possibility. However, obviously, when we're within this, and especially towards the equilibrium, then we want to be looking, obviously, to favor more short setups. Now, if we get the close above this, I'm aware that we've got a secondary gap up here, but I think a close above this would be a sign of strength. We would see this flip to an inversion, an inversion gap, and then I would be looking to target liquidity resting above this high. We can see the previous high here, from a higher time frame, also reflected here on the daily at 2,431.47 is the level that's currently capping the market. And we see even on a daily scale, we haven't managed to close above that yet. So whilst we're in here, we could be looking for price to draw up just a little bit intraday, but I would want to see us close above this to really regain the bullish. And that concludes our weekly outlook. Have a fantastic week ahead, and we look forward to seeing you soon over at BrightFunded.